those of you who showed up this evening. At this time, would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we begin, we need to amend the agenda to, the superintendent has informed me we have two non-publics that we need to add to the agenda due to some time-sensitive issues that have arisen. So one for nominations and resignations, and then a second non-public for legal.
Make a motion to include those in the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Petrie, second by Mrs. Moore. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Before, we accidentally left off public participation. We will have public participation. Before we have public participation, I just would like to say our longtime kitchen director of cafeteria services, when we owned it, Diane Petrie, and Mr. Petrie lost her father yesterday, or the day before yesterday. So our thoughts and prayers to you and Diane. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Glidden. 92.
92.
So that's a. All right. Public participation. Not yet. Okay. Then we'll go into the budget.
Which pieces do we want to?
Well, we were distributed sort of an updated operating budget proposed.
And
Specifically, can we talk about the changes?
the changes?
Yeah.
Certainly. Do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
What is included as far as changes in this operating budget dated today is that we have gone ahead and done the budget adjustments for those non-negotiated wage increases for secretarial staff, SAU staff, and administrators. So that all those changes would reflect in the third column over current year with budget adjustments, so that you have more of an accurate determination as far as what the difference is and what the net change is in terms of percentages. Just given the time constraints, what we will be doing is continuing on with doing those budget adjustments for para-educators, but it really, the changes that we've made have addressed the issues that were discussed at last week's meeting. At our last week's meeting, we also talked about making some cuts, and those cuts have been tracked on a separate sheet, which we have for you to circulate. So we haven't actually applied all of those cuts here. And so we have that second sheet if you want. Yep.
And why didn't we apply the cuts?
Well, so that we have like one formal documentation. You really don't have meeting minutes from last week, so what we did was we had just received not too long, a few hours ago, meeting minutes, so we thought we would take all of that information from the meeting minutes and come up with a formal checklist, document tracking all of the decisions that were made last week.
And if you note that the last two on there, the new lines that were created with the change in the SAU pieces, those are here because to include those in the operating budget as it has been amended would have shifted all of the budget lines that we're using for discussion. So if you had looked at, I want to talk about line 526, 526 might be 529 now because of adding lines. So we added that here for discussion purposes rather than shift everything here as you've been already making notes on a working copy. Trying to keep it as clean as possible.
So as far as last week's net changes, you made reductions last week totaling $68,363, bringing your new bottom line to $683,398.
I will open it up to the board. We have had another week to digest more information. Specific questions, comments?
I have a question, I don't know if there's Matt here. Cheer uniforms were in this budget, and I thought we just got cheer uniforms last year. Are we I don't know what number. It's on page 19 of 54 of the budget.
Okay.
There's no number here, it's just under notes.
Well, the number is under supplies athletic,
273.
but the detail ends up on page 19.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that we've had an increase in the amount of kids that are participating, so that's potentially why that number's there.
Okay. And my other question under athletics was, we have an SRO. I thought he was going to be doing details at games, and we're still paying a police officer $200 for games. I thought that was part of his memorandum.
He does cover some of the games, but not all of them between basketball and football, so that's why that number's in there. You also understand this year too, the JV and varsity games are on some different nights. Varsity and Division IV play one night, and the JVs play on a different night, so.
The answer, for those of you listening at home,
Sorry.
first, for the cheering question was that more students are participating in cheering, so they anticipate having to order some more uniforms this year. And the answer to Mrs. Moran's second question was that the SRO does cover some games, but with the amount of football and basketball games and the fact that we've moved to Division IV and need to add additional JV nights, I'm assuming too much for one person to cover all of that. Okay. Other questions? Comments?
I have a comment.
Mr. Petrie?
Right, as we know, the CPI went up, what, 1%? Cost of living northeast,
7.
I beg your pardon?
1.6 or 1.7, I think.
Well, and that's what we should, as a matter of fact, the elderly are getting a, I believe it's 0.3% raise. And we need to bring this down to meet that same criteria.
What criteria would that be? So what
Well,
percent increase?
0.3 was the
So you're looking for...
0.3%.
You're looking for a 0.3% increase for the entire
Well, I'd
budget?
like to get it closer. You know, that gap keeps getting farther and further.
Is that a motion?
No, I would like to get some, well, I guess to get discussion on that, I guess I'd have to make a motion.
What exactly is the motion, Mr. Petrie?
Let's make it 1%, just to, for,
So the motion is to reduce the raises
to
from
1%,
3%
1%
to
increase.
1%.
Is that raises or the
Or the
overall budget?
that's the overall budget,
Oh,
the
reduction
bottom line.
Bottom line.
And then we can figure out where those those increases will be from the 17 budget.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second the discussion.
Second for discussion. Are you looking for more of an explanation from the
Well,
superintendent?
how do we get there?
I'd like
If
to
that
know
were-
what the rationale is to use this measure as a measurement of what we need or what we don't need. Why did you pick that number?
Why did I pick that number? Because that's what they're getting for revenue. Elderly,
Who's they?
veterans, people on social security and disability. That's what they're
So-
getting, that's what the federal government's figured out, that's what they're gonna need to maintain a level of income to pay their bills.
So can you connect that to what it costs to run a school?
Right, exactly. Same idea.
What's that idea?
Well, you can't, if you keep increasing, then you're gonna have more and more people losing their homes. Matter of fact, we've gone through a time that, matter of fact, foreclosures are up near record levels. I think it's paired off now, but that's what we were at.
And can you connect that to a school budget?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
If you don't have any people in the town, they can't, matter of fact, that's what's happening in Middleton right now. They're leaving because they can't afford their taxes, their property taxes. We keep doing that, and you're just gonna keep, those kids you're trying to help are not gonna be here. And our economy is still not what it should be.
Well, if we keep squeezing our school system so that we can't provide any services, people aren't going to want to be here either. So I don't understand your connection, is what I'm saying.
Well,
That and the school budget.
If I can.
Go ahead.
Part of some conversations that I've had is, and maybe we need to talk about that, we turned back $650,000. And this budget is up $602,000. So it's that 648 that we turned back, plus 602. So maybe some discussion on the 648 that we returned might give people some thought, because right now, they're saying, well, overall, the budget's up 1.2. So maybe some.
Because
thought on
if I'm Joe taxpayer layman looking at this, how do we defend the argument that, geez, guys, you went up 600 grand, but then you turned back 600 grand last year, in previous years have turned back a certain amount of numbers, I mean, I can't quote them off the top of my head, I'm sure we could look them up. We've got to make an argument of why that's necessary. I'm not certain that so far in our budget presentations, we've made that argument so that someone at home can understand that.
I guess what I'm suggesting is we need to change the discussion. We constantly are challenged to cut and support reasons why we need to cut, but prices go up all the time. We should be building a budget that proves that we need, and I believe that's what Ruth Ellen is trying to present to us. And we shouldn't be comparing it to last year, we should be comparing it to what we need now and the situation that is now. And instead of defending why we have to spend more than last year, we should be defending, which is what Ruth Ellen is trying to do, what we are asking for. And it's our job to make sure that that's appropriate for our students, not to make sure that we are within some range of last year, because last year was a different year and a different set of circumstances. And now we have a school system we're trying to run, and we're trying to provide the best education we can. And I just think that if we consistently make decisions based on the bottom line and based on these weird things, it doesn't get us anywhere.
I need, as a school board member, to be able to explain that to Joe taxpayer when they approach me downtown. I'm not sure yet that I can. I'm really not. I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
I know that. I'm just saying that basing what we should get as a bottom line on some number somewhere doesn't make any sense to me. And I hope it doesn't make sense to Joe taxpayer. I hope our citizens understand what it takes to run a school, and that you can't just artificially design what you want the budget to be. You have to base it on what we need to support our kids. That's all I'm saying.
But one could make the argument, I know you don't want to look at last year, but one could make the argument that you turned back over 600,000 last year when you had more kids and more staff.
I think it's twofold, as I hold up 3 fingers. No, it's twofold. One, the turnback of the funds, we have zero of a long-term plan. And I believe that our change in leadership in our administration and inside of our buildings is going to help us focus on that long-term plan. Those funds that were turned back were supposed to be spent on long-term improvements, roofs, heating systems, efficiencies in our heating in our older buildings, things like that. All of those funds could have been spent that way over the last couple of years, but have not for various reasons. And what's different this year is we are correcting some gaps that were generated in the last 2 years of cuts. Piggybacking on that particular concept, for example, some administration positions added back into, out of cycle, right? So they weren't in the budget that was approved in March, but they're back in now. A preventative maintenance plan for our boiler system. We didn't have that before. That's something new that's now in this budget. A couple of transition positions, I'll call them, our behavior specialist and our ELO. What does it stand for again?
Extended learning opportunities.
Thank you. Those are 2 new positions that our administration believes is absolutely necessary for the success of our kids, especially at the high school and at the very, very early ages on the behavior piece. Some things that were a surprise, and I paid very close attention as a Joe Q public person last year, that was a surprise in cuts, was the technology position being shared between Henry Wilson and Valley View. That was never discussed in the proposal for last year's budget. Yet, it was something that was, hey, this is what the budget says we're going to do, so we have to do it. So that's being corrected with this proposed budget, with this 4% increase. Another correction, the band teacher, going from one full-time band teacher shared between the 2 schools down to a half-time band teacher at the high school. We're hearing from teachers, parents, students, there is enough interest in band, music, and chorus that we need to put that back in. An increase by 2 paraprofessionals at the high school. Some IDEA grant money is uncertain, so we need to fund through our general operating budget, at least 1 position there that would normally be covered by IDEA grant. On the other side, some reductions. We're not going to replace the grounds position in the facilities department. We haven't offered summer school in a couple years, so we're taking that out of the budget. That's just a summary. What I'm particularly excited about in terms of long-term planning is that full-time tech teacher at both Valley View and Henry Wilson morphing into an integrator role and getting technology into our curriculum. I think that's going to be a standout offering for this district. I don't want to see a skimp on that. And then some other smaller extras, but again, they're going to make our curriculum stand out. Winter curriculum for our PE offerings at Valley View. High-set test licensure. Keeping with our vocational program, which the tuition up at the Lakes Technical Center is going up 3% year over year. So then, not to mention, our second most expensive item in our budget is health benefits for our employees, and that's going up 3.5%. So that's the short, long answer to those questions, I think.
I think we need to look at history too. When our budget is way up and we have warrant articles, we have to bring a budget that the people can support. It's not necessarily that I'm just coming in and saying, let's cut everything. We need to bring a budget to the people that they'll support, and I don't think a 4% increase in our budget is something our town's going to support. I looked back through history, whether...
But that's the point. We don't go out and sell it because we stop it right here. And our school has suffered because of it, I think. We should go out and explain to people exactly why we need this stuff and why we want to do this for their children. We don't do that. We stop it right here, and it never gets out there.
Did you have your hand up a minute ago?
I was thinking,
Okay.
all right, we're spending roughly $15,000 per pupil right now. And I was gonna look up what the average around the state was. But we have less and less kids, and that means we're gonna get less and less revenue from our, and when I say revenue, I mean what the state will kick in as far as adequacy. That goes down, and we have to be careful because we're gonna lose stabilization funds, which is, what was the last year, 138,000? Approximately. I believe that's what it was.
Stabilization portion
Yes, just the stabilization.
is approximately 135, yes.
135, okay, so you're gonna lose again that much this year, and you're gonna have less kids, because that's where we're at. So that means you're gonna lose more, because you're gonna lose the part, it's figured on population, and it is what it is. So that's more that, are we counting on that? Does this budget reflect that?
The loss of revenue.
The loss.
Loss in revenue?
The loss of, for one, the adequacy, on the adequacy side, which, less kids, which is approximately 11, what?
Well,
Up to probably $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a child.
Well, I have included for you, under your revenue tab, what your state adequacy aid will be for this community. But right now, we're looking
Well, how do
at,
we know that? Because we haven't come up on June 30th yet, which is when it's figured.
okay.
Is that correct?
By
I know it
November.
is.
Okay, well, November 15th, the state has to provide to us what the proposed adequacy would be, and also the statewide equalized property tax. So you have that worksheet in your notebooks, and that is the most up-to-date number that we would have
But it
for
doesn't-
developing the budget.
Because it's not, what we get is based on 30 June 17 numbers.
When we get into fiscal year 17-18, come spring of 2018, depending upon where we have for pupils in the district, the commissioner's office can adjust the adequacy aid. But we would not know that until April 2018. So we're developing a budget based upon the worksheet that you have dated November 15th under revenue. We will be figuring out what tax impact is.
I don't have one.
And if you go to your revenue tab, you should have an adequacy aid worksheet.
Do you have one?
This is fund number 61, 23,
That's not
24, and
under
40.
revenue. I don't have anything.
I have
Is that right?
special revenue, but I don't have.
Under a revenue tab.
No,
You've
there's
got
nothing under
adequacy
revenue.
aid.
Nothing there.
This is empty too.
We do have a special revenue sheet. We don't
Okay.
have a-
Okay, my mistake, I thought that it had been circulated.
Can we get some copies?
Absolutely.
The other side of the revenues that come in,
Yep.
and that would be with our adequacy aid. As our students improve in their scores, we would get less aid. Is that a reason to not help them improve?
No, it is what it is. You get so much per child.
Right.
If they're special ed, they get more, which is counterintuitive, in my opinion, because you should, matter of fact, we tried to change that after the third grade test. We tried to get it so if you passed, or if you got better than what the standard was, you would get the money, not if you failed. So the more you fail, the more money you get. Now, we don't get, I think it's only 3 kids, third grade, after the third grade test, the,
I'm not aware of any funds specifically tied to that.
yeah, there is.
There is a piece
It's
of the formula,
675, I
but
believe
it's,
it is. It's around that.
while the formula reads that it's 3 students, it's not actually 3 students that it's tied to, it's a percentage of, so it's not just, these 3 kids didn't, therefore we get this much. It doesn't read quite that way as they go through the entire formula.
Well, that's what the
but-
chart shows. That's what, that's the facts. I mean, I can,
I
it's just
understand.
very easy, but we tried to change that, but and the other portion is free reduced. How many kids we have? This is approximately 50%.
In a year?
50% of our kids, so it has nothing to do with whether they do well or do bad. It is what it is. And, matter of fact, there was a chart done by DOE in 2011 that showed that academic achievement has nothing to do with social, the social environmental factors. That was done by DOE. And what that was, on one axis, you had the free and reduced lunch, that's your poorer
It's
people.
a measure of your
It's measure
economic status, yeah.
versus academic achievement. And that, it did not have no bands of correlation.
It was pre-intervention times compared to the results of having intervention?
We've had RTI, I think, since I've been on the board, which is 9 years. Is that correct? RTI?
Yeah.
So if they're showing that after 9 years of intervention, the children who come from a lesser financial situation are performing the same as those who are coming from a strong financial situation are performing the same, you don't think that proves that the interventions work?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
you. Sir?
Messages with this.
You did get this at one point, I don't know if it was in the budget binder, maybe just prior to budget. We did get this at one point. It wasn't in the budget binder though, but we did.
It was at a board meeting.
I don't see it.
Right,
I
you
did.
presented
Yeah.
the
Just a-
details of it,
Right.
so it just wasn't in the binder.
Yeah.
So that's the tab it goes in.
Thank you. I think we had it electronically.
Okay, this shows we had, in that line we was talking about, we had 6, ADM was 6 kids. Average daily membership in that category.
So going forward in your 17-18 budget, if you want to just flip fast forward to the bottom of page, where it says page 11 of 16, on this handout,
Page of what?
11 of 16 of the handout we just gave you. See at the very top, Farmington, following over in that shaded column, we will receive in adequacy alone $5,879,283.
What's the difference from last year?
Compared, right, so compared last year, we received $6,093,603. So we do have a reduction.
And that's an estimate, if I read that right.
This-
That column says estimated.
Right, and that's correct.
What was the difference of, did you do,
Let's see.
I didn't hear the second number.
$6,093,603.
So it's what'd you say, 280 something difference? From one year to the next?
Well,
For your adequacy, right, it's a reduction of $214,320.
So they're telling you your 214 was. That's reflected in this budget?
And we're not guaranteed that money, right?
No.
It's still an
It
estimate.
says estimated right in the column.
So that is the state, the Department of Education's way of telling us we don't need as much year over year because we have lower enrollment.
Well, the whole state's doing that.
And
We-
possibly because we are improving as well, potentially.
No, it hasn't got nothing to do with it. It's the number of kids you have. And actually, the legislature fixed that because they were running 4 years behind on what the number of kids were and what they were paying for. And we had, when I started in the legislature, it was 221,000 kids. We're down 169.5 the last time I was given a briefing. So everybody is getting lower and lower numbers. This is the second grayest state in the country now. We were the third.
Lori, if nothing changes, what's the overall tax impact of just the budget? From where we are today at 2503?
I would like to have some time to be able to calculate the tax rate, actually. So for every 100,000, though, it is 22.5 cents on the tax rate.
So we don't know what Article 3 is going to read. If it's Article 3, the article for raise and appropriating for our operating budget, SAU, general fund, food service, federal funds, all of that.
Did you take this out?
No, I just
Oh.
took this number, which really should reflect this.
We're going to see warrant articles next week. I guess I just should remind everybody that we have to put tax impact on our warrant articles for the
Yes.
first time this year.
Absolutely. As Lori calculates that, these last week also, you had copies of the trust funds that were very difficult to read. These are updated and legible. Thank you.
We were also going to get full impact of the 3 scenarios for para hours.
So that's the one I emailed. Emailed to you
Sorry, so I'm here for
in writing.
my job.
Yeah, we do have a motion still on
Do
the
you want me to
floor.
give it to you?
Any further discussion on that motion?
Do you want to
Do
print
you
that
have
out
it, Angie,
here?
written down?
Yes, the motion by Mr. Petrie is to reduce the bottom line from a 4% increase to a 1% increase, seconded by Mrs. Moran.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Sorry, did we have those? No.
I do have it, I'm just
That
going
was
to print it
emailed
Oh, okay.
to...
Oh.
Which is not.
Do you have a
reflected.
capability of printing from there to here? Because I don't have the printer driver for here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I do, but let me check.
Unless I just email it to all board members now.
You could do that. Does everyone have? I don't.
Have this.
Okay.
What,
That, she was looking to see if she could email us stuff. I didn't bring mine. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, are you connected to
looking.
this printer driver?
I'm checking.
Are you connected to this printer driver, Cynthia? Are you connected to the
I think I might be.
Okay, so let me email it to you. You need to email your file.
This may be coming, so we'll see if it starts up in a moment.
Okay.
Can we talk about other reductions? Because I know Mrs. Cardinal talked about using Huddle as a fundraiser versus paying for Huddle for one sport versus all of them.
You mean fundraising to support Huddle rather than using Huddle as a fundraiser?
Rather than funding.
Then
Funding.
funding it through fundraising.
Funding it through fundraising.
Okay.
Yes. And that was $1,850.
So that's a motion?
Yeah.
To take that out of the athletic budget? Do I have a second?
Sure.
Second by Mr. Petrie. Discussion? No discussion? All
What is
those-
what's the line number?
It is under,
273?
I just sent you something via email. If you just sent it.
In the full budget, right?
it is $274. The software program. For football. Sorry, it's $800, not $1,850.
That's why I wanted to ask. I don't remember it being that much.
Sorry, I must have. added.
It's 1,800.
It's $850.
Oh, 850.
No, it's $800.
$800. So reduce it by, reduce it down to zero. Reduce by $800.
I don't know where I got
For me to do the tax, we
Removing
need to be
You want to change, Joe?
Right, so
Change it to
basically
that.
they're looking at
Huddle.
as they make
Software for football.
Okay,
Peanut.
I mean, I can come up
Yeah, I
with
think
the new
that's-
bottom line dollar.
So are you
numbers.
still seconding?
I think that's what they're
You're
looking at.
seconding
So
the
if the
Huddle
bottom
soft-
line changes,
reducing the Huddle
what
software
what
for
does that do to the tax rate?
Instead of $1,850, sorry, I had my number wrong.
What line?
I need to take into
Line
consideration all
274.
revenues. Do you see what I'm saying?
On page
I did.
19 of the budget, they handed us this one. I didn't see them.
To zero?
To zero.
Are you seconding?
Yeah.
You're still seconding.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Did you vote yes, Joe?
Yeah.
3-2.
Well, did it fail or?
They
Passed,
Okay.
passed 3
That
to 2.
was,
Can you repeat the motion for me?
It was to reduce the Huddle.
Reduce the
software
athletic
line,
budget by
whatever that
$800.
was,
Yeah.
Removing Huddle software for
zero.
football.
Okay,
Which was $800.
okay. It's 1850, okay. Thank you.
It's 3 to 2. Thank you.
did we find out for line 12, that $15,000, whether we had to have it or not for broadcasting through MetroCast?
Looking
That
at-
was one of the questions.
Looking at the contract, it appears that it gives us access to the channel, but does not require us to populate the channel, from what I can tell.
So we have to have this in order to access it.
In order to broadcast on the access channel, we would need that production server, yes. If we were only live streaming events, then we don't need that server.
And that's something we must, it's a must-have for this year.
The server that we have currently has been Band-Aided a bit. I don't anticipate that it's going to last much longer. We also have an analog server, and we are patching an analog server into a digital system and trying to make them work. It's not pretty.
That's also what I have.
So the decision we made, I'm sorry, on that topic, the decision we made last meeting to remove it, the $15,995 from the operating budget and make it its own separate warrant article with the wording very clear on what it means for our district, that is in fact possible.
I don't know that it is possible, because we wouldn't
She
be
said
able-
she looked through the contract with MetroCast.
She said we could live stream, but we couldn't.
You're saying we are not legally obliged to broadcast.
We have access to those channels to broadcast upon. I don't see that we are required to populate those channels. We have the option to do so.
But we are required to because of that warrant article.
The warrant article says that we need to be broadcasting those. And so by the MetroCast contract, not necessarily, by the warrant article from 2006, that says that we are broadcasting via Channel 25. And so that would be what would need to be rescinded in order for the other to take place solely as live stream or video broadcast online. I think as it's reflected in the minutes, our warrant wording was a little bit vague with the two-part piece of that. It needs to be clear that if we rescind 2006, Article 31, and say that we are going to be just live streaming, then it would not have a tax impact. If we were to not rescind that, then the tax impact would be raising and appropriating that amount for that server in order to maintain the requirements of that article.
But we can't rescind that article.
It would be, right, if it's rescinded, there's no impact. If it is not rescinded, the tax impact would be this.
So what we're passing out is the health insurance impact for increased hours for paraeducators. If I'm reading this, for, what do we, I thought we were,
32 or 30?
well, yeah, what, is this increasing them to how many hours?
Whether it's 30 or 32, their contract is at 30, they would be eligible for. So either way,
We have to add these together.
the impact would be the same.
Right.
So their collective bargaining agreement says that at 30 hours, they are eligible for health insurance. And if that's the case, the impact would be the same whether it's 30 or 32 and a half.
Now, is that historical 25% utilization rate?
Yes.
So this is general, just for the general fund only. So we figure there's 37 paraeducators budgeted going forward in 17-18. 25% utilization rate is rounded up to 10 employees who would, taking health insurance. The remaining 27 are entitled, per the CBA, to receive a health insurance buyback of $1,000 if they don't take the coverage. So that middle column figures out that 10 employees for 1 year would be $70,261 to the district. Plus, you would also figure the other 27 employees with the buyback, $1,000, plus the FICA impact is $29,065. So total health insurance impact is $99,326.
And do we know the difference, probably not, but the difference between 37 paras at 30 hours salary line as compared to 32, what?
We gave you that
I guess I would
last-
have to.
Oh, that's on that?
That was
That was on the handout.
Oh, that's right, the salary was on there.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
look that up, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
So am I assessing the two worksheets correctly in that if a motion were to be made, seconded, and passed to
No.
put all paras back to 32 and a half hours per week, the financial impact would be estimated at just under $200,000 for 1 year?
Correct.
196,88109.
These two numbers. Thank you.
Were the pairs at 32 hours? I thought they were at 30, 28 and a half to 30 hours for last year. I don't think.
28 and 3/4 hours. I think prior to the change, it was 32 and a half.
Was it 32 and a half?
Yes, yes.
And the impact at 30 hours would be about 132.4.
Yep.
I wonder. Mrs. Cardinal?
Do we need a motion to deliberate this?
We probably should. What's the proposal? The proposal is 32.
The proposal was 32, yes. And then the 30 was given as a compromise.
You're looking for one to deal with the parish right now? I'll move that we go to 32.5 hours and take the impact of 196,88109.
In the operating budget.
Okay, we have a motion. And a second.
I will second.
Second, discussion.
Is it the administration's position that all 37 paras need to be full-time to be successful, for our district to be successful? Or is there a hybrid combination of some, it is appropriate to stay part-time, and some, it is appropriate to be full-time?
I think the most successful scenario is going to be at 32.5. The compromise was to look at the 30. At the point that we look at, as we talked last week, looking at some part-time, some full-time, then we start looking at the way that seniority plays into getting the best people to be working with particular students, particularly in a one-on-one situation. That gets a little bit more dicey. It's not insurmountable, but it becomes certainly more potentially problematic for students.
I moved for this, or I support this, because we have set a goal a while ago to be in the top 10 in a certain amount of years. And so in order to get on that path, we need to create a school culture and a learning environment that is very positive for our town, for our children. And the way to do that is to have every member of our educating team, administrators, educators, teachers, and paras, to feel very professional and very vested in the community. In order to do that, they all have to be, I think, in my opinion, valued as a full-time employee and given all the benefits that full-time employees will see. We noticed when we went to half-time that, or when we went to part-time, whatever you want to call it, people were just resigning and going to get other jobs because people want to work full-time. And so we can either decide we are going to not support these things and become a training ground for teachers who will, and paras who will work for a couple of years and then go off someplace else, or we can support them and have them vested in our school and our community, and together we can build that top 10% school that we want it to be. So I think we need to really think about creating a school environment that's supportive for every level of educator. So I support this.
Other discussion? Mrs. Cardinal?
Other school districts in the area, in the state, are those primarily using paras on a full-time basis or a part-time basis, or is it?
It's done both ways. Those who are primarily utilizing part-time also are paying at a higher rate. They're also finding that it's a harder situation to keep paras because the paras are going where the benefits are available.
Sure.
And we have had a difficult time filling positions that we've had open this year.
Other discussion? Why do we present, philosophically, why do we present a compromise? Why is a compromise scenario presented if we're not compromising services?
There would be a compromise in services. The compromise was presented, frankly, because I was hearing from board members that there was a concern about the bottom line, and I was looking for a way to perhaps mitigate the impact and still move us in a direction toward restoring the services more completely in the coming year. And so rather than to take an all or nothing, to try to at least move us if we couldn't go the full step.
Go ahead, Mrs. Cardinal.
If we had all of our paraeducator positions established as full-time positions, and there was an opening, and it was established as a full-time position for the opening, and you had an individual interested in working it part-time and no other candidates, would you work out, or would Ms. DeNitto work out a scenario where you would still employ those individuals at a part-time basis that was looking for a part-time paraeducator position?
It would frankly depend upon the position. I think if there was a position that some could be more readily split between two people who might share the position. If you're looking at a one-on-one position, that's much more difficult because of the transition time for the student. But there are those para positions that, yes, could potentially be split and shared if someone were looking for that. Certainly not opposed to being creative with the staffing.
Stan, you made the motion, so I'm going to dialogue with you for a moment. when we negotiated with the paras last year, we talked about when you face the amount of loss of revenue that we faced, after the dust settles, you have to dust yourself off and then try to sort of build back where you got. You think that, and so you truly believe that we have to make the jump to full-time this year, everybody?
Yes, and I believe we made a mistake in putting them at halftime because we sacrificed them. And even with that, we ended up giving money back, both years. So it was unnecessary. It was just a grandstanding motion, and it made our paras suffer, and we lost some very good ones because of it. And I just don't want to see that trend continue. I want to see us support our human capital. This is human capital. They deal directly with our kids, and these people deal directly with our most at-risk population. And so they need the respect that all professionals deserve. And I think we owe it to them and our kids to provide them with the best professional staff they can have. And people feel valued, work harder, and do their jobs better than people that don't feel valued.
So I have to ask this again from you, Ruth Ellen. I kind of wish Diana was here too, but if 18 out of the 37 paras were put to full-time, you'd have to offer that to the 18 most senior members of the collective group, but could then take those people and reassign them to positions based on strengths where they would offer the best service to the children in need.
Potentially. I mean, it certainly would need to look at if those full-time positions, where the need is, yes, to some extent. I mean, there may be some places where the person you have available and the need that you have are not the best match, but because of the seniority issue, that's where you need to go there. It does lock you in a little bit more, but it doesn't preclude that there can't be any type of movement there.
And then we're on the first year of a 2-year agreement with them, correct? Was theirs a 2-year agreement?
Currently the first
Yep.
year.
2-year agreement. Okay. Other discussion?
It sounds like we have some other options. I mean, if you say we can work with 18, it doesn't sound like we've tried everything we can try. Just
My problem with picking a number like 18 is that you create haves and have-nots, and you create friction within a staff that is unnecessary. You know, then you're going to get, you're just going to have people who are disgruntled because they're number 19 on the list, and you know, what's the educational value of this? I don't see an educational value of picking a number and saying we need to cut off right here. All of our students are worthwhile, and all of our students need the services.
I also feel like we're stepping, I mean, look, I'm not opposed to this yet. I might not be all there, but I also feel like we're kind of stepping on a little bit on our process that we went through last year. You know, this board voted, with the exception of Mrs. Cardinal, who's a new member, to ratify, we didn't vote to go back to 32 hours.
But the hours aren't in the contract.
Correct, but that conversation certainly came up. Go ahead.
Sure.
Joe had one too.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, go.
I lost my train of
Yeah,
thought, I'm sorry.
well, let me ask you this. You tell me. Is it hard to recruit teachers at this point?
Frankly, it has been, yes. Yes.
Why is that? I mean, what, is that because the system has failed to put out teachers from the colleges, or what, or qualified here? What are we up against here?
I think it's a number of factors. I think, you know, what we offer by and large, it's not just our pay scale, it is our climate, our environment, our, you know, our reputation has preceded us in some areas, and it has made it more difficult to recruit. I want to see that change.
Would you rather have a teacher in those para roles, or a para?
To say a teacher in a para role,
Well, more qualified, obviously.
Two different qualifications.
it would be wonderful if I had everyone certified who is at teacher level providing services for students. However, if I can have one person and then only service 10 students, or I could have two people and service 20 students, depending upon the level of need, sometimes you need to look at, I have 20 kids who have the need. And so, I don't think that we are at the point where we can say, we're going to hire just teachers across the board. It would be lovely to be able to do so. We're not there yet.
Is the
With
market there?
with the numbers that we would need to be able to service.
Is the market there? In other words, are there enough teachers to supply the need?
I would, if you're paying teachers a teacher salary to do the work, that's one thing. If you're paying teachers a para salary to do the work, no. And I don't know, particularly as you get into secondary levels, how many certified teachers you're going to have in those roles, because secondary teachers tend to be more content specific in their training, and oftentimes paras need to be pretty agile generalists in working with students.
How many first-year teachers do we have? Or, and let's put it this way, the first 3 years, actually the first 5 years.
Not 10.
Because I think they're kind of grouped.
Okay, that was a moving target. Give me a second.
Well, it's the way the laws are written,
So, I mean, you're asking how many are still,
right?
who are not tenured?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Let me see if I can just pull that one. I think actually, we just kind of do something about that. And I think it was nearly 40 who were fairly new.
Right, we looked at that with,
Yeah.
40?
It
Out of how many?
was.
100?
I
Out
had
of-
those notes with me. I don't-
That was with-
Let me see what I can find. Let's see about running a filter. Let's see.
our
You
teaching.
said first 5 years with 5 years
Yeah,
experience? Is that what you-
tenured is probably a better word.
Well, tenured is,
I mean-
also includes how long they've been in district. So you're looking at just within the first
Well,
5 years of
If they got
experience.
5 years' experience, I believe they're,
Well, it doesn't mean they're automatically tenured when they come here. They need to have been here for a certain amount of time once they get here to become
right,
tenured
well,
here.
well, let's use the word tenured there.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
works.
Which is for how many years' experience? I didn't hear that part.
Start with 5 years
5
experience.
years' experience, okay.
And then we'll parse it out from there.
Okay.
So.
If I'm looking at 5 years' experience, but that,
Motion is
okay.
to
So it is, it's
have
51.
32.5.
51
51
Half.
teachers. Just, yeah, half.
It's roughly half.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
We have a motion on the floor to bring the paras back to 32.5 hours in a second. Further discussion or questions?
One last question. If all paras are put at 32 and a half hours, are those 2 additional paras that are built into the budget necessary? There's one for FHS and one for Valley View? Numbers 36 and 37?
I would say at this juncture, yes, but we could certainly look to see where the needs, again, with paraprofessionals tend to shift as our population changes. And so on paper right now, yes, that could change next week.
Oh, right, because a couple of them were based on student need
Right.
coming into district. That's right, yeah. Now I remember. Thank you.
How many paras did we lose last year after we lost all the K through 6 kids? Did we reduce, how many?
I think there were 2, but I think they all got hired back.
What,
So
2?
you're referring to departures in the district?
Well, I'm talking
You know,
about
cuts.
cuts. in-
Position cuts for
Position
paras.
cuts, based on the loss of students and special needs students as well.
Let me see if I can find that for you.
Last year's presentation.
Trying to find the worksheet.
It's okay, I just wasn't,
It's either 2 or 4.
I'm trying to.
I know this is one.
not left. Well, position
but-
wasn't cut.
No, her position wasn't cut, but somebody that was cut took her position.
It's okay.
Keep finding,
Okay.
I keep
It's
trying to
okay.
locate.
All right.
It's all right.
Is that something you'd like us to get for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
just-
You might have last year's presentation in the
It's okay.
folder.
We have a motion and a second. I'd like to deal with this motion in a second. Through further discussion, questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Do we have any additional motions?
I'll move to go to 30 hours.
And I second.
Okay, motion and a second to put the paras at 30 hours, which would have an impact of 132,387, just in case anyone's wondering. Okay, discussion on that.
I guess for me, I'd like to see how it's going to work. You know, where are they gonna put people? Not necessarily people, but would it work in any other capacity? Do they all have to be full-time? Is there any way that we can try something else?
To me, making this shift, if this were to pass, would also carry with it higher expectations on the individuals. And, you know, where we are going to have more of an evaluation, feedback, progressive, you know, professional development culture in our district, that this would enable the para educators to have a much stronger role as opposed to just, you know, these are the children that I serve, and I have to clock out by this certain time. So with that becomes a trade-off of, okay, and now you're going to have a much stronger role in the culture of what it means to be an educator in these buildings.
Weren't those expectations already in place according to the CBA? evaluations, professional development, they're all in place. I don't know how you can hold them any further accountable with the contract in place.
Well, I'm not saying accountability, I'm saying expectations. Those are two very different things to me. To me, the difference would be more of fixing the culture that's been in these schools for the last several years. Evaluations haven't been done on a regular basis, as the contract says they will be done for these employees. And that's where the switcheroo has to happen. Evaluation is not a negative thing. Evaluation
think
is
it
a
is either.
feedback loop, and it's expected, and everybody gets it. It's an opportunity, and it's not oh, I didn't get an evaluation, so I'm good kind of mentality.
So the expectation falls on a different body, though, not the paras,
To perform evaluations? No.
to perform evaluations.
No.
Who's it? Talk me through this a little bit.
The role of the paraeducator with this additional time
Yeah.
becomes much more morphed into the role that we want paraeducators to be by going from 28 hours to 30 hours a week. There's no longer you've met the minimum, now clock out. If we make this change. Now there is the sense of security, the sense of value, the sense of higher expectations on the individuals to contribute more into the culture of the schools.
Okay.
Because I think the last couple of years where that change has been made, where you're saying you want to see what it would look like, with the change was made down to the reduced hours, it's very rushed, it's very, the time in the handoffs and the ability to contribute more to the improving culture of the school has been, their hands have been tied on that.
And I would support that statement because, as we heard last year, part of the problem that the paras saw with the hours was that when after-school PD was offered, they couldn't attend. And now they will be able to attend some of these things, and they'll be able to be more fully participating in the culture and see what's going on right in the school. And I think that's, again, beneficial to treat them as professionals and educators that they need to be.
Part of what you're asking.
Just last year or over the last 2 years?
I believe this was last year's budget presentation. So last year.
So 7.
7.
Lost 7 paras last year. Reduction.
Is that how many?
We had a reduction of 7, but did that actually happen? Because I remember hiring because we needed them, so we hired more back.
Do you want to?
How many did we have total?
How many, she said we reduced by 7 last year.
But what was the total?
Of what?
Paras.
Oh, I don't know.
Part of that reduction is that at the high school, we had a person who left partway through the year and a couple retire. And so rather than replacing those 3, we had hired an additional case manager, which was then cut out of the budget. So I think the number was 4 at first, but then if you add those back in there. So I don't know if that 7 is reflected with those 3 or not.
Probably
you.
not. This is 1 at the high school.
Well, it also says to support district-wide.
District-wide, right.
This is more of a general budget question, but it's going to help me make a decision. What was the philosophical approach to the budget this year? Let me ask this more specifically. With what the principals presented to you, the building principals presented to you and department heads, how much of that has been cut before it came to us?
Okay. There were discussions about why is this needed? What are you looking to do here? There were pieces that were cut. I don't have a particular number that I can tell you. This was in discussions with each one. There were pieces to say, okay, perhaps this is not, is there another way you could do this? It wasn't just principals gave me their wish list, and I said, go forth and spend. We did look at cuts that had been made, places where programs had been, frankly, were beginning to be damaged by the cuts that had been continuing, and looked to see where things needed to begin to shift and come back. When I was hired, I was given a charge by this board that you're looking for this school district to be in the top 10. I understand that I do not have a carte blanche open spending account. I understand where I work. I do know that over the past 6 years, we've returned more than $4 million to the town. And those are funds that were raised and appropriated and then not spent on things that probably should have been. And we are at a point where we need to start rebuilding the foundations in order to move forward and truly bring excellence back to Farmington. And that was the philosophy that I used in going forward and looking at what's here.
If you would, can you venture a guesstimate as to a dollar amount that you cut before it came to us?
I would say it varies. It was probably at least, $30,000 to $50,000 per building
Okay.
that we talked about. Is that something that we have to go there? Is there something else we could do?
I think the reason I bring it up is I had a couple of conversations over the weekend with staff members from a couple different buildings, and their, I don't know if it was a perception or it was just said verbatim, but their feeling was, or their approach to present their own budget was go for gold. That was the term used by the staff member, that we were told this year when we do our budgets to go for gold. Whether or not that was said directly or that was the perception, it just, I'll tell you, it's weighed on me pretty heavily over the weekend. It's weighed on me pretty heavily. So I'm just curious, as to where we were at in the buildings and if we were all on the same page with how we approached budget this year.
When I sat down with my department heads, I said, what do you need to run your department? At no point did I say the words go for gold. I didn't say, give me your top dollar. I said, what do you need to do what you've been charged to do and to start to rebuild programs?
Stan?
I would just point out that go for gold could also mean quality, not money. And so I think that the idea in our district is that we should be going for the gold in terms of quality, and I think that's what Phil is trying to do.
I didn't take that from the conversation, but maybe.
You have a principal who would like to respond.
I mean, I can tell
Yes,
you,
no, certainly, yeah.
the conversation we had at Farmington High School with the department heads and the staff as a whole was the fact that we would do a zero-based budget in the sense of, tell me what you need to run your departments and run your classrooms and your programs, and then submit that to me. And then what I did is I went through those pieces of it, and I'd go back to the department heads or go back to specific teachers to find out why they needed certain things. And if there wasn't justification within that, then those things were cut back down to other pieces. If they were able to justify and give me hard fact as to why they wanted those things, and I could justify that to Ruth Ellen, then I kept that in the budget. At no point did anybody here go for the gold. It was, what do you need to run your buildings or run your departments and run your programs? So.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I had to resubmit to staff several times to please put in things that you need for your classrooms. And the response I repeatedly got was, We don't get anything. We've been told never to put anything in. And then they, not complain, but then they're like, I wish we had things to teach with. They're spending their own money on items. So never once were we, I mean, I had to beg the people that I got stuff to put in for, because they're afraid to just put things in to get cut. And so I did take out money that people had proposed out of our SIG grant this year. That's running out, and so there's about $20,000 worth of science, math, technology that I removed from requests from the budget for the following year, the 17-18 budget, to get this year with that SIG money, knowing that that was going to run out, and that we could fund some of those things that we do need in our building. Microscopes, those have been on a list for 5 years at least. So.
Okay, thank you.
So my approach was very similar. I put it out to them and I said, tell me what you need for your classrooms, but I did tell them that if they went above what had been budgeted, I needed an explanation. So if it was above what had been budgeted last year, I said, I need you to tell me why and give me a good explanation as to why I would increase the budget for what reason, so that I would be able to have an answer if I came here. And they took that to heart, and I think that they kept it as low as they could, but they also asked for what they needed. And we've tried to purchase some things that they need through funds that we still have in the budget right now, and kind of offset that so that next year it wouldn't be as high as some of them had requested.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to increase para hours to 30. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Passes 3-2.
Other areas of the budget we want to look at?
I think, going on what Joe said, I'd like to, we need to find some ways to bring it down. I don't know what those ways are, but I think the town is typically at 2%, their increases.
I think they went down this year. They bought it down some.
Right, but their increases typically are about 2% for their budget.
They're keeping it pretty trim.
Yeah. And they try and do that with us in mind, so, because we are a really big employer and we have a big budget, and I just think going out with all of this money is gonna get us at best, the fall.
Is that a motion?
I didn't make any motion.
No. Okay.
I'm making a statement. I tried to reduce it.
Default. That's what's gonna happen.
Because with what we just added, we're up to about 5% increase. I won't say 5, but 4.5.
We can do the math real
It's a
quick.
default.
If you want to know the percentage, we can do the math real quick.
The default was.
Normally I'd say wait, but
The
if you'd like
percentage
to say
difference.
something, go ahead. Okay.
The 4% number that you started talking about, that was what was the hours for the paras?
It was
in
another
there
hundred.
for, was that at the 28.5 or was that 32?
That was at the
30.
28 and a half.
It was at the correct.
Level.
So we
And
added
the-
another 132,387.
Okay. I
And the
wasn't sure if that
four-
went up or down.
The 4% was before you took out the 60 some odd last week as well.
Well, that's what makes it difficult to see.
Then we can put a new bottom line.
Yes.
Yes, please.
So the new bottom line with changes that occurred last week, the reduction in huddle software and the increase in para hours, it would be $14,814,985.
And what is that as a percentage of the current budget adjusted?
So, let's see. .7%.
What's the difference between that and the default?
Let me see.
Before the paras, it was about 106,000.
Oh, $200,000. Give or take.
How much?
About $200,000 difference. This is higher.
So I'm not going to add the para hours to the default. That's right. Let's see, 14, 645, 184, 1484, 985. Okay, $169,801.
We did get an answer from DRA on the default budget question that came up last week, too. The money for the SAU lease should be removed from the default budget if the lease is not renewed, but the school cannot add the savings back into the default budget for the construction of a new building unless the school is under contract. So we would reduce that amount, but we wouldn't be able to shift those lines. So the new lines that would be in the operating budget would not be in the default budget.
Understood.
But they're in there now, in the default budget that we have.
What?
The 22.
Because the default budget that we have has it as the rental lines as opposed to
Right.
the, and so that would need to change.
What's the total, taking out the 37.5 for that AD thing, we already did take out, what's the total in this proposed budget for new positions? What else was there?
Yellow coordinator. 31. Two halftime what?
There's a time ban in Farmington at Henry Wilson and making halftime tech a full-time.
And then there was the behavior and
The BCBA is in the
It's going to
grant.
be a grant.
There's probably no place where they're all listed together.
And SAU will have an assistant.
Right, and the SAU
It's
assistant.
actually a tab in front of each location.
So if you look at each location, so in front of the SAU tab, there's a sheet that lists the new position there. If you look in front of the Henry Wilson tab, there's a sheet that lists the new positions
Well,
there.
okay,
So,
like this is an
Here.
so, right.
okay. Oh. Oops. So it doesn't tell you the total, it just says this and this.
Because those would be, right, so if you add those together. Because they're separate lines.
Sorry, if someone has anything they want to talk about, go ahead, I'll recognize you, because I've got to do some math. What?
No, I just, but on your proposal. Let anybody speak.
Are you gonna speak?
Well, I'm talking about the board.
I know.
I'm going to work up some of those numbers for you too, Joel.
It's the same number.
Oh.
Because it's taking the same position and just increasing it in both schools.
Okay. Nothing in it, yes.
Correct. Because the ELO position was created this year.
Right.
Why can't we use the IDA funding for paraeducators? I'm just looking under special ed tab.
We are looking to move 2 paraeducators out of IDEA funding into the general fund, because we are anticipating a decrease in those revenues for next year and anticipating the need for those positions. And so wanting to make sure that we had funding to cover those positions.
When is that cut made? For IDEA?
We probably won't get final numbers there, I believe, until April or so, if even April.
So if you want to talk about some of the numbers that we have for positions. First column being the wages and the benefits.
So for the position at the SAU for the executive assistant would be, it's proposed at 35 for wages, benefits would be 25,692. Special education.
What was that again, sorry?
Yeah,
Sorry, it was 35 plus 25,692.
What's that total? No,
That's-
sorry.
That's okay.
I can do it.
That's going to be 35 and 25 is going to
Oh,
be,
it's all even?
Yeah.
well,
Oh,
and then you
add
have the 692 to it, so.
Okay.
60,692.
Two-person health.
Right, and that's, yes, that's for a 2-person.
Okay.
Special education, those were the,
Was it 3 para-educators?
that was 3 paras across district.
One as a result from loss of IDA funding, and 2 are 2 additional requests.
And we haven't had 2 pairs that we could move into those positions. These are needed in addition to what we already have.
These
So
are
it's
in-
2 more, so that 37 that we just did, that includes the 2, right, the 37?
Yes, it does
pairs,
include the
okay.
vacancies, yes. Yes, it does.
So this, the special ed, currently staffed, okay, that was my question, okay.
With the other 2.
So, hold on. So, Farmington High School has had an increased number of special education students. That's justifying 1 paraeducator. The other justification is Valley View has had students move into the district who either require one-on-one services or shared support beyond current level of staffing. So am I to assume that these students are not being serviced right now? Because we're budgeting for next year to service students that are already here.
One of them we are not. He's shared and it should be a one-on-one. So it's not receiving the level of service he should receive.
According to his IEP?
She knew it was coming.
So in an effort to avoid due process, we're going to hire somebody now. Okay.
How many special ed coordinators do we have in the district? One?
And a half.
1.5.
We have someone who coordinates the preschool and all the early supports and services. So any referrals we receive from age 2.5 to 3 when they can come to our program, so someone coordinates all of that.
So we need a fifth person? Or is that another half-time position that's in the budget? I'm sorry.
Oh, wait a minute, where are you?
Yeah, special ed coordinator. So that would bring us up to 5.5 special ed coordinators. I thought we just, when we worked out the budget last year, one of the biggest questions
This
that,
special ed coordinator would be grant funded.
eventually grants run out, so
This is the position that we have currently that is here because it has been shifted in its, it had been a hybrid position. We're looking to make it a full admin position.
is there an opportunity to take one of the people that we already have and use this grant fund and keep just?
This would be that same person. This is not an additional.
So this is a
that-
reduction in the budget because it's coming out of grant funds?
It is currently grant funded. This is a clarification of the position. It did not exist in this form, and so it's here now in front of you.
So we still have 4.5 in this budget, so we'll still have 4.5 special ed coordinators.
We don't have 4.5 special ed coordinators.
Oh, I thought you just said 4.5.
1.5.
A half.
Oh,
So
one
it's the
and a half.
one that's right there
It's
and
this
then a
one.
half.
Okay, I heard 4.5, I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay,
That's where I got my 5 from.
I understand that now. Okay. Your math worked, it was just not based on the same numbers I had.
No, because you
Okay.
had the right ones.
But why are we calling it a staffing request, a proposed staffing request?
Because it is a change in the position.
What position do they hold now?
That's that hybrid position that we've discussed the job description for. And so we're looking to make it an admin position as special ed coordinator.
I was confusing it with case managers, I think.
Okay.
Is
And
it
so perhaps it's a misnomer to have it in there as new, but it was a change, therefore, for clarification, I put it in. Perhaps I should not have, if that further complicates.
So this moved from one line into this line, so it's a new line, yes?
It's a new, it's still in the grant, but yes, because the position has changed somewhat.
What line did that come out of? So I can,
And it will still be grant funded.
It will still be grant
So you're not going to
funded.
see it
I'm not
in
gonna see it
here.
in there.
Right.
But it's being grant funded and given a substantial raise.
No, actually, it's grant funded and being level funded, if not cut back a smidge.
So the individual that fills this position now is making $63,000 annually as a salary.
Which is why I wanted the job description clarified, yes.
Is there a change in days? Was it a change in
There was a
work
change in
days?
days that I'm proposing. There's a change in the overall job description. Which is why I was viewing it as a different position.
And why is the Valley View, or this para at Valley View moving from IDA funding?
Because we anticipate IDEA funding being cut next year. And we wanted to be sure that we could maintain the number of paras that we have had, but we're anticipating that we will not be able to fund that with a grant.
Okay. All right. Okay, sorry. I
Oh,
just-
that's all right.
Okay.
Do you have a total of newly proposed positions in this budget, what that totals? Could you generate that, please?
So if we were to, all right, so I'm going to exclude this particular hybrid, the sped coordinator.
Mm.
So if we're looking at just general fund, so wages is $145,777.
Wait, say that one more time.
145,777. The benefit component, which is FICA, health and dental, is $69,984. Total is $215,761.
Is that excluded? Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Take off the halftime assistant principal, because that, I believe, was taken out of the budget last.
Yeah, it was already
That was,
taken out.
that's already been removed, so that,
So I added it. I just added it differently, that's all, that's why I asked.
Okay.
So this number reflects 3 paras, tech, band, administrative assistant, and that's
That's
it,
it.
right?
that's it,
That's
right.
it.
And this hybrid thing, no budget impact, all
Correct.
grant. Is it safe, would it be safe to make this statement, and if I'm wrong, I want to hear why I'm wrong, I want you to defend, I want you to argue it. Is it safe to say that, paras aside, although we could lump what we just voted in as part of this, that we are in this budget proposing basically, with the paras aside, because I think we said we cut 7 paras, we are proposing every position back that we cut last year in 3 out of the 7 paras. No?
No.
We cut a classroom teacher at Valley View for every grade, first, second, and third.
Last year.
Yeah.
Right, because.
This is the first year
because
without
based on
those.
numbers.
Right.
Right.
This is the first year without those, so 15 teachers, 15 and a half teachers were
No, that was
in
not-
the original proposal, if
Right,
you look
that's
at the
not- that's not what-
presentation.
What happened, though.
There wasn't 15 teachers last year.
That's what was in the proposed budget.
Right.
You definitely lost a teacher, first grade, second grade, and third grade.
Right. Three. And we added one in kindergarten, right?
I want to say 5. I don't have my list in front of me, but I had at least 4.
But there were some that were cut due to the fact that we were trying to get to a certain number, and then some that were cut based on the fact that enrollment just went down.
Right.
It was a different, so is it safe to say that the ones that we cut that weren't tied to enrollment, we have put back in this year's budget?
You cut both the tech assistant and the secretary to the superintendent. That would be a combined position, so that would be 1 for 2. Technology was cut, that is a replacement. Was music cut in that? Half, okay, and it would be adding half back. So that would be an addition. So the tech and the
Case
music.
manager at the high school and half guidance.
And the PBL.
Were not
PBL?
replaced.
Yeah, that was in the year case manager.
Oh, yeah.
But we also added an ELO.
That was created out of the halftime guidance and,
Right, so it kind of is coming back 1 for 1.
Yeah. That particular example is 1.5 to 1, down to 1.
well, we took the contracted services that were, and created the position, so it'd be 2 halves to 1, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Is this board, curious to hear your opinions on this, is this board concerned that if we put forth a budget that's at a certain number, that people are just going to say, nope, I'm going to go for the
Absolutely.
default budget?
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, do you have that concern that people are going to say, no way, we're going to go for default?
History tells us.
I'm more concerned with what all the different warrant articles are going to do to influence the budget vote. Having contracts, 2 contracts up at the same time. I'm more concerned with what attitude the voters are going to go in with, seeing all of that on one ballot at once.
Shock.
So doesn't that make for the argument a little bit that we should trim this more? I mean, I don't know. You get, and I'm at an age where I don't care what I get plugged anymore, but you get plugged as the guy who just doesn't want to spend anything on education, and nothing could be further from the truth, but I do have a problem swallowing all this.
No, I think, to answer that question, I think if the right conversations are happening, no, I'm not concerned that the default will pass. It's not going to be the end of the world if the default passes, by the way. It won't be. We've had worse situations in terms of the cuts to what funding we're able to use to build these schools. However, I think as long as the message is consistent, as long as our budget committee gets all their answers, their questions answered, and is on the same page with us, and I really think that the 5-0 support of the budget from us, and how many folks are on the budget committee now?
9, 8.
So come when the ballots are printed,
More
let's
than
say
5.
it's, yeah, let's say it's 6.
You got my vote.
If it's a 6-0 support, I think that also influences our voters. I think that this town, there's a huge population of this town that is ready to see improvement. And when I study what other small towns across the country do to improve themselves quickly, they start with their schools. It's not like that for cities. But small towns, when they improve the value of their town, when they see curb appeal improving, more families that want to take care of their properties moving in, et cetera, it starts with great schools.
I guess I didn't think we were as bad off as the picture is painted that we are sometimes. Maybe I've got rose-colored glasses
Yeah,
on when it
PR
comes
is a
to
big part.
Farmington.
I've talked up a budget I've tried to encourage people to go for it. But when they get in there, and this year especially, they're gonna be tallying up their increases, especially with the impacts being on the ballot. I could be talking to you and you're saying, yeah, I think that's a great idea, I'm really behind that, but when they get in that ballot booth, history has very much said, and we still have deliberative, if at deliberative, somebody reduces the budget, does that reduce, that does not reduce the default, but
Correct.
it could be that they reduce the budget because we haven't. You know, so if
Yeah, it's
we're not
possible.
doing our best to sell the budget, if that's the way that we decide we want to go, or our best to come in at a number, and I know, Stan, you hate that, look, I think we should come in at a number that our town can support, because as much as we want to do well for the children, we need to do well for our taxpayers too, and if they can't afford to be here, then we can't afford to raise their children here in these schools.
The path of least resistance. They vote with their feet.
I think the thing we're not taking into consideration is that we have a new administration and we have a positive direction, which we didn't have before. Before it was cut, 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 and we saw negative impressions of the school, of the staff, of everything. And now we're trying to turn that around. And so when we have something positive to show, and that, you know, clearly we're deliberating about this now, and it's our job to convince people that we have their children's best interest at heart, and invite more people to move into the town. That's what we want. Angie's correct, 100%. People aren't going to come here if all we do is figure out what we want our taxes to be and make the school system that can support that. We need to support a school system that shows growth, shows initiative, shows culture, and then those people will say, I want my kids in Farmington School. They're not moving out because their taxes are too high. They're moving out because they don't like the services they get for the money they pay. And that's a big difference. We have never taken any kind of survey as to why you're moving out of town. We have just assuming they're moving out for one reason or not. I don't even know that they're moving out. I just know that we need to make some improvements. And we started out on a good path, and if we tie hands now, we're not going to get anywhere. We're just going to end up a spiral down, and we want the spiral to be up.
Is there ever a situation where you look at an administrative team and say, that's too much? Or do you just stamp yes?
No, I can look at a team and say it's too much. But right now, it looks like it's not. I'm trusting the superintendent to decide that, because that's what we hired her to do. In 3 years' time, maybe it is. Maybe it will be too much. But right now, it seems like we need the support to get everything together and to get everything moving in the right direction.
I would like to see this board set an expectation of our superintendent and a continuous creative tension on reducing the cost of our overhead. Things like getting really creative in our competitive bids over multi-year contracts, you know, when we do have solid grant funding, you know, getting a really big bang for the buck on those dollars. Something that will benefit our district, you know, extend it out into the future versus, well, we have this money, we got to use it or lose it sort of mentality that we've had with past administration. That's on us to make sure that those conversations keep happening and that level expectation is nice and high. Because we need to apply more of our dollars, our tax dollars, to the direct benefit of our students, to keeping the opportunity to work in the Farmington School District is a competitive opportunity for our classroom and other services. that we provide for these students. A great example is solar power.
I just don't want to put anything on the roof and then rip the roof off. I
Oh,
wanna
yes,
get it done in the right
yes,
order.
It takes multi-years of planning, exactly.
Other
So
comments?
are we just going to push this budget on with the reductions that we've done? That's where we're at, right? We're done? Nobody
Yeah.
has any further reductions?
I had one, but I don't think it's worth the risk. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the budget as amended to date, if we have a good track of all the amendments that have been done. Or the motions captured.
Motion to approve is amended.
I'll second that.
Second, discussion.
Do you need to hear what that bottom line number was again?
14,814,985.
Right, $14,814,985.
Discussion.
And I'll just say I support this because at this point, if you make any cuts, it's just looking to see what you can cut for the sake of cutting, and there's no educational value to that. So, this is what it looks like is the best we can do to maintain the educational quality we want. And otherwise, we're just cutting to reduce quality and reduce funds. So I'll support the budget as it is.
Other comments?
I can't in good conscience take 4.7% increase to the budget.
Anything, Joe?
No, it's too much. You gotta live within your means. And that's at the national level, all the way down to our level. And we're the ones that decide that. If you don't do it, it'll be done for you.
One thing we didn't poke at is the 3% raise. That's not necessarily going to happen with every position, but is being put into the plan. We're hearing that the town is going with a 2%.
No, 2% overall budget increase is what they typically have, is what they said.
Oh, I thought that was salary increase.
No. It's typically not over 2%, I should say, their increases. I can't think of it here where it's been more. Yeah, you can. Just.
Usually we get, the town does merit raises, so they look at each position, and some person may not receive a raise at all, so each person may receive a 4 or 5% raise.
Oh, no, I'm talking overall, their whole budget.
Yeah, I
They
think
try
it's
and.
probably 2 or 3% that they put in, but then they can do a little lower number because they know that not everybody's going to get a raise, or they have an idea.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I would just like to point out that I think that comparing the 4.7 or 4%, whatever it is, increase to, as an increase over last year is unfair, because last year we were splitting the SAU cost, and we decided to go as a single district. Overhead doesn't really change, and we made those cuts and all that that we need. So now we have to assume 100% of the SAU cost, and that's going to intrinsically make the budget higher than it would have been in previous years. So I think comparing that is a little bit unfair.
What was Middleton's contribution to SAU?
It wasn't enough.
Approximately 112,000.
112,000.
And we was paying for half of theirs anyway, so, which is true.
So when you're looking at the percent increase, I just want to point out that you're looking at the proposed versus the current year's adjusted budget. Keep in mind that the current year's approved budget is $94,000 greater. So when you're looking at just a 4.7% increase, that's not comparing what was approved. It's comparing what was raised and appropriated.
It's 4% if you do the other one.
I'm not sure, I'm not going to venture to say what is the appropriate
Yeah.
number. I just wanted to point that out, that if that's the number that's...
Also,
Seems that
Lori,
with you.
these proposed salary, wages, benefits for new para positions are now incorrect because you figured this on a 28.5 an hour. And so so these are now actually more. These proposed paras.
But the number, 14,814,985 includes it. That's the two worksheets that she put in front of us, and we added them
They're
up.
in this one. They're in here on the right.
So no, the
Lori, add
paper
it.
doesn't have it here.
Yeah, okay.
They're
So
in
when
here-
she's saying
they're in here
4.7%.
correctly, but they're not in the budget book correctly.
But that's figured into that number?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
all
it
right,
is.
okay.
As well as the
But
health.
The new
that was a good-
positions.
That was a good
That's
point,
correct.
The new
As well as the
positions.
health insurance impact as well, yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt this budget as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Then we'll have another motion. What was the number again? 14 million what?
$14,814,985 is your bottom line. This way.
It's a difference of 169,801. Right.
Is there anything that you would prefer to pull out and have the voters decide as a separate warrant article, similar to the broadcast equipment and the fence?
Yeah.
New positions.
It's really our,
It's a facetious little joke, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time with increasing hours for paras and then putting in all the positions that basically weren't tied to enrollment for the most part in 1 year. I mean, some of us remember the 2001 cut. We didn't gain that all back in a year. It took us 6, 7, or 8 years to gain it back. I feel like we want it all back all at once. And I'm not sure that's possible after you lose $3.5 million in revenue.
I agree.
So for the folks that went to the polls last year and voted on passing the budget that was there, which is $94,000 less than what we actually got for this school year, those folks passed it thinking that the technology positions were still at Valley View and Henry Wilson, if they were paying close attention. I know you probably think that they don't, and that's okay. I'm not knocking that. But were you surprised when we were going through, nominations and found out that the technology position was cut in half at Valley View and Henry Wilson? Because I was, and I paid very close attention.
Yeah.
So to say that we're undoing the cuts that were done, that wasn't a communicated cut.
Well,
It's
that-
likewise with the
that's just
band
one.
teacher.
I would not agree that you can apply your level of attention to this budget to the average voter.
No.
And if that insults anybody at home, I'm sorry.
No.
But I'm telling you right now, it's just not true.
But there was a high-level presentation
Yeah.
delivered to the Budget Committee, and there were a lot of parents paying attention to that, a lot. None of those reductions were put into that presentation. Many of the cuts were. No programs were going to be cut, was the message. But programs sure were reduced. So I know that you find it very difficult to convince folks that they need to pass a 4.7% increase. But that's a comparative number. It's a relative term. If we compared it to what the number would have been if the presentation was full and complete, it wouldn't be as much of an increase this year. It might even be 1%, 2%. Last year would have been the challenge, right? So no matter what, when we're talking about what our district needs to perform well, we got some convincing to do.
How is that gonna be measured, performing well?
I have one success indicator. Our legal fees. Right? One of a very small, it was a huge number last few years, but when we are doing things right and we're doing it well, and we are confident in the decisions that we're making all year long, you don't run the risk of all of the legal proceedings. This one.
I'll make a motion that we reduce the 4.7% increase to 2.5. And leave it up to the administration.
What does that put us at, Lori?
Let's see, that would put you at $14,502,828.
I'm sorry, repeat one more time, please.
$14,502,828. You're looking at a 2.5% increase.
Last year's budget.
Adjusted.
And the decisions of where that would be spent would be
I just thought they would be.
left to the admin team to decide.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I heard that correctly.
Yeah, that is what I said. And can I give a little bit of reasoning?
If you get a second.
No?
Sorry, I'm doing his
Sorry, I
job.
don't have a second.
Is there a second on her motion?
Sure.
Second by Joe. Good.
For discussion.
For discussion, yeah. So I'm saying, by putting it below, I know, the default budget, we have more of an opportunity to keep a lot of the things that are in here, because if, I'm going with history, if our proposed budget is the one that passes, the programs and things that we have in this budget is what's going to pass. If the default budget passes, none of these new positions, none of the new programs, none of the, is going to be included in it. That's a little bit of my reasoning.
Does that make it below the,
The default.
It's below the default, and so you can't assume that that everything is gonna stay in the budget if you're reducing it below the default.
What's the default again?
14,645,184. 72.
So we end up strangling our growth.
Yeah, I need to give you a new number on the default, because I did, last week, clarified it for me that the SAU lease renewal was removed with exception to July's and August's rent. So your default is now $14,626,784.
I know that. Oh, yes.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
What's the number?
14,502,828.
502?
Yeah.
Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? No.
It's up to you, Dale.
I'll make a motion. 14,599,224, which represents 215,761, which is proposed for new positions. That's just the number that I'm proposing to reduce it by.
Reduce it to.
Reduce it to.
Okay.
Re-
Reducing
well,
by would be a lot.
No. Reducing by is 215,761.
Right.
Being reduced by that amount, which reflects the amount you gave me for new positioning. Whether or not you take the money in the budget and fund some new positioning is up to you, but that's the number. So that brings you to 14,599,224. And that's.
24?
Yep. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Penny. Discussion.
What is the percentage on that?
3.2.
Thank you.
3.2, you said? Thank you.
It's above the adjusted, not the proposed, not the past budget, right, the adjusted.
It's based on the adjusted, that's correct.
Any discussion on that?
How was that 3 point? Did I write that down wrong?
3.2?
Yeah, if my 2.5 was this, what was your 3.2% decrease?
This number is higher than what you
Than I-
proposed.
Yeah,
Oh,
but I thought she just said it was 3.2%. Oh, it makes the overall increase
Right,
3.2,
right.
not
Yeah.
decrease. Okay,
Right.
sorry.
oh.
That was the question.
Yeah.
What was the budget, what would that budget increase by?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Happy times.
I'm starting to write the dates, the times that the post was made, so I can keep track of them. Joe, what you got? It's your turn.
My turn?
Yep,
I
you're
already
up.
did mine. Remember, I was first. 1%. With reasoning. Our foreclosure rate actually is improving to 1 in 1,517. Was 1 in 533. So we're 3 times better than what we were. We're getting there. As long as it ain't my house, I guess it's good.
We're gonna stay.
So when do you want to go, Mr. Chairman?
Just waiting to see if anybody wanted to post another idea.
I've
Yeah,
scrutinized
meeting.
everything I wanted to scrutinize.
Personally, I don't see a benefit of just throwing out numbers there and saying that the administration can make the decision. I think we need to make some educational value judgments on things, and if we can't do that, then we've obviously tapped it as low as we want to go. So I'm not willing to just willy-nilly pick a number and go there.
Well, I think based on the votes that have happened, 3 of us definitely want to reduce it by some amount. I think it's the amount that we can't decide on. I think educational value is going to be up to the superintendent and her team from wherever we come up with.
We've already reduced by 68,000 last week. And to pick a number and say reduce by this much, because we want to get it closer to the default, then.
No, I wasn't trying just to get it closer to the default. I was giving a reason why that would be
Right, you think that it would be, you have a better chance of passing. That a 4.7% increase has no shot of passing. I see,
I don't think so.
Try it.
yeah, I see it as it's giving the voters a choice. A reduction that's closer to default doesn't really give the voters a choice.
Gives you the programs that you want to implement.
The programs you want to keep, the default won't do that.
Didn't really stop us this year from fixing problems. Right? We had, how much did we have in insurance savings built into this plan for this school year? And then it turned out we couldn't realize those savings. And it not only wasn't applied to the teacher's contract, it was applied to our custodians, it was applied to every administration position that had a multi-year contract, and we had to come up with the money.
And we still turned back $648,000.
And I think, I don't know if we all know the reason why.
I know the reason why, I'm clear.
Because we don't have a 5-year plan in any respect. For facilities, for technology, no 5-year plan.
And that's where the.
I
There's
just-
one-
I
all
find
there
it-
is- There's one up on the
I
shelf
find it
up
so
there,
comical
but
that, you're looking at me like
Might want
this.
to dust it off.
Yet this board has been in place.
Oh, it has a plan.
I
It's had a plan.
really, from my perspective, I can't fix everything in 9 months.
And that's
It's-
not the expectation, I don't think, of the
No.
board, is that you come on and fix it.
Yet
But I'm gonna
we keep
fix that.
failing every motion 2 to 3. There's 3 folks that really want to keep cutting down. And I understand why you want to keep cutting down. But how do we keep passing a budget that's flawed? Because we want to cut the bottom line. We're not learning from our mistakes.
I think we're learning from history, though.
And history is repeating itself at this very moment. Last year, I sat over there and I watched a motion to cut the bottom line by X number of dollars. And then it was handwritten at the bottom of the budget. That went to the voters. A handwritten, they'll take that number and just cut it a little bit more. So that's how we got into the mess of, well, where does the cut come from? Oh, we had to put a placeholder somewhere. That's how we got into that mess that we spent so much time fixing this year. We need to get out of doing that. We put together, our administration put together the budget. We've made some changes. We scrutinized last week, made some reductions. We increased today to support the problem of our support staff, our paraeducator staff, not being sufficient enough to achieve what we want to achieve, right? That's what we need to put in front of the voters. We can't just go, I don't think it's going to pass, so let's just take a few, more $100,000 off.
If you look at the default budget, which was the 14,626,784, as the budget for next year if we fail to do anything, the 14,814,985, which has all the positions and all the things that our superintendent and principals and teachers and educators in the district think are necessary, that's only 1.2% increase. So in
Over what?
reality.
Over what?
Over the default budget. So in reality, if the default is the default, because that's where we have to go next year, then we actually are only asking for a 1.2% increase to get all the stuff that's in this budget right now. Which I don't think is an unreasonable amount.
I think the plan is a good idea. Matter of fact, I've suggested in the past. We have a goal, now we have to devise a plan to get to that goal. And we have not done that, we keep putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And we've had a strategic plan, we've set on that We went down to, that building was first built with a Holiday Inn is.
Yeah.
And we went down to Stratford, matter of fact, I believe you was there too. Where is it? Sits on the shelf, collecting dust.
It was a
You can't-
5-year
it's
plan
not a
that
plan.
was done in 2006.
That's not a plan. That's a plan is something you take, it's a living document. You keep doing feedback loops, like I've said in the past. You say, is achieving our goal? And if it's not, then you do something in the plan to revise it. And we've not done that. We just keep a rudderless ship. That's what we are.
Well, I would
And if you
disagree.
come up with a plan, if we devise a plan, I might be more amenable to,
I think
you know.
Ruth Ellen has
Cart
devised a
before the
plan in this
horse.
budget. The new positions and shifting things around and programs to fill and all that stuff.
Well,
This is a
it's,
plan.
you know, I've seen more positions added in the last few years than I care to mention. I mean, it's, and is it
But can
really
you say they were the
indicated-
right ones?
I don't know. I see our scores going down instead of up, if that's a measure.
Because you've been cutting.
And that's our DOE that's doing that. I mean, we try something different every week, it seems so. That's not very good.
Make the motion that we bring this number to the budget committee,
What number?
the proposed budget.
Yeah, go ahead.
The 14,814,985?
Sure.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
I'm really not
No.
in favor either.
Did you vote no or
What
yes?
are you
I
voting?
voted no.
No, yes, yes.
It was 3-2.
Ah,
I didn't say that I had to vote my own.
Hey, you got a yes vote on it, I mean, a while ago. 14,502. And that keeps some of the programs.
I had asked last week if there was a bottom line that you were looking for. And again, looking at, I'm hearing that at least 3 of you are uncomfortable with where we are. What I'm not hearing is any type of consensus of what you feel is where we should be. Nor that, other than it might not pass, that there's a solid, this is why. I mean, I understand. This is a number, and historically, as we're looking at the amounts that have been turned back and where things have been, yep, this is a departure from where we've been. And I'm not looking to just throw something out that is going to set us up for failure. That's not why I brought this budget to you. I guess I'm a little frustrated that if this isn't where you feel you can support, that I'm not getting, here's what we can support. I'm getting, well, let's try this, let's try this. And so, what is it that you feel you can support if this isn't it?
well, from my standpoint, that's why I made the motion for 14,599,224. I can support that number. The reason I can support that number is because you're still going to be able to fund some new positions out of that. Not all of them, not all of them in one budget cycle. We're going to have to decide which ones out of the ones we want are more important this year. And then next year, we come back and we
Look at
add a little more. I just think that's, I'm sorry, my dad's in my head right now. And you know what? There has to be a voice for those people too. Recently I was told by a community member that because I didn't have kids in the school, I wasn't as good of a board member. That's fine. I'll be the voice for some of the people who no longer have kids in the school and are on fixed incomes too. They can't be forgotten about. They cannot. So that's why I can live with that number, because you will be able to get, because I know you can, because you've said, can we spend it how we want it? Because already in your mind, you're saying, I'm gonna get still some new positions out of that number. I know you are.
I thought you cut all of the money for the new position.
I did, but
The money. He didn't cut the positions. He
I
cut
didn't
money.
cut the positions, I didn't say no new positions, I just said that's the number that I would, and that was based on my vote earlier in the night. I can support one or the other.
That's how we've been doing things, just throwing numbers out there and saying, cut whatever you want. And we can't expect different results when we make the same choices all the time. We can't act this way. We have to either support things or take things out. And I think it's unfair to expect Ruth Ellen to just take a number and then decide whether or not she wants paper or fuel or whatever.
Well, and understand it
You've
won't be done in a
already
vacuum
scrutinized
just with me.
every
It will be a team
But
decision.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
We're expecting you to do something that you've told us, you've given us the plan.
Well, let's look at athletics again then. Because athletics,
So then we're looking at, you're making the decisions of where the cuts are as opposed to we are?
I'm not a fan of arbitrarily saying, here's the number, go make it work. I'm in favor of rethinking, the decisions that led to this total number.
I would agree with that.
Similar to how each building and department did it with each of their staff members.
As Milton Friedman would say, it's easy to spend other people's money.
No, I find it very difficult, actually. I find it extremely difficult. And when I think about how to help the folks that are on a fixed income, right? When I think about the communities who have a balance of families with children in the schools and folks who either don't have children in the schools, let's say they tuition them themselves, personal choice, or they homeschool them, or, they don't have children, or their children are grown and moved on. When I think about how the numbers work and the long-term strategy for helping those folks, it keeps circling back to improving the schools. So, again, all of this, where I'm proposing to support the budget as amended, it goes hand in hand with, now the expectations are higher, to find ways to get those taxpayers the best bang for their buck, myself included, and that's why I scrutinize every proposal that gets put in front of this board. Tax dollars or grant dollars, any money that wants to get spent out of here, I'm treating it like it's my own money. What would I do, right? And I think that's why folks voted to put me in this seat. The long-term strategy is to increase the value of the town. The valuation is what gets you a lower tax rate. So even though if your personal property is worth $80,000, but the rest of the town increases in value, which improved schools can do that, it's directly related. It takes time, but it's directly related.
I put 12 budgets before this town as a school administrator here. Every one of them had some big hopes in it that it would get through. None of them did. And then I turned around and made do with what I had and ran a good school. And I'm telling you that some more cuts to this budget is not going to hurt this school. Will we get to our goal as quickly? Maybe not. But we keep plugging. I mean, if that's, if, I can't be asked to adopt this attitude that just because the administration asks for it, it's just, we should just give it to them. Right? I mean, philosophical, why are we here?
I don't think we're doing
Why
that.
are we here?
I don't think we're doing
We scrutinized
that.
it last week, and we took things out, and everybody supports the things that are left. So now, we're just playing a game of what's the percentage increase, and what can we get past? And we're second-guessing the good folks out there. Angie's right, they should decide. Do we want to go with a better school improvement plan and support all these things that are in this budget that have been justified by our principals, by our teachers, by the superintendent? Or do we want to just pick a number because that's what we want our number to be, which has no educational value whatsoever? We've done that year after year after year, and as Joe pointed out, we're not getting anywhere. So let's try something different. Let's try to put before the town a good rationale for educational improvement. That's only 1.2% more than what the default would be anyway.
But didn't we schedule this meeting tonight to continue to scrutinize the budget?
And nobody had anything else to cut. That was the point. We've had opportunities and no one can find anything else. Or we couldn't find anything that we'd agreed on.
When is the budget due to the budget committee?
Well, we were looking at
Last week.
tomorrow, but again,
So
we need to have a decision.
We are being asked
before-
to.
And I guess, to let you know where I stand, I mean, I absolutely appreciate the support, and I do feel that this is, and we went in with the philosophy of zero-based budget. What do you need? Given my druthers, if there's going to be a cut made, I would prefer that my admin team and I be able to decide where that comes from. Because in the long run, I think it's easier to perhaps mitigate the impact of that cut that way. I mean, obviously, I brought this forward for a reason. But if a cut is going to be made, I would prefer that we have the opportunity to decide where that goes.
I'm looking back at the different motions.
Hey, we can be like New Jersey. They were Abbott schools. They spent over $44,000 per student. And guess where their academic achievement is? Explain that one to me.
I don't know anything about New Jersey, Joe, so I
As
can't
a
really
state,
explain it. It's
you're
not our-
asking,
Abbott
you're
districts.
asking to
I'm sure it's a point
compare
one.
a small town in New Hampshire to an entire state of New Jersey? Is that
No,
what
the
you're
Abbott
saying?
districts. No, the argument is, we spend more money, we'll get better education. Also, Detroit, look at Detroit schools. They spend over $17,000 per student. Their academic achievement's in the toilet.
Okay, do we have any thoughts on a number, or anybody want to?
I mean, the one that we've come closest to agreeing on was your motion, Mr. Shagnon, on the further reduction that equals the added back positions.
Well, they've all been 3-2 votes.
Right.
But in terms of, you know, the stalemate we have going on here, who's saying no, who's saying yes, that's the only place where we've had kind of a shift.
So then, I'll
I
make a
just think
motion
it was
that
so many of those positions.
our bottom line is 14,700,000. That's,
It's right about in the middle of where we've come closest,
right.
so I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Was there a second?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Angie's second.
Angie, second. I'm not sure where we came closest to what?
Your proposal, 14,599.
Right.
And whose?
And our
And-
motion, the motion to approve as amended was made twice,
14.8
14
was made.
versus 14.6. So right in the middle is 14.7.
So this will put it just above the default budget.
Right.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Petrie, just if I can pick on you for a minute, you didn't support the 14,599, but you supported the 14,502.
Is there something in the middle there?
That's right, let's go.
502 is it.
Of being this one out. I'm gonna re-motion for 14,599,224. Do I have a second? Second, any discussion?
I just want to note that if, for the record, if I vote in favor of this, I am in no way supporting the notion that the positions that are being proposed to add back in are not necessary.
I didn't either.
Okay. Just, that's the number.
Yeah,
That's what-
I know.
How you derived that original number.
Mhm.
But it didn't-
Because I
it didn't
agree with
attach to
putting
the-
many of those positions back in.
I have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Passed.
14,599,224. On to Mr. Henry's group. All right. Any other, we're all set, right?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, who
Public
seconded
parti-
that? Oh, you did.
Public participation.
Few questions, forgive me while I start. Stephen Henry. On the paras, it sounded like you settled on 30 hours. It wasn't quite clear whether you were picking the dollar number or picking the hours that they would work, because we had talked about not every para necessarily needing to work the same number of hours, which leaves me with the question, we were presented, the issue that was caused with the 28 and a half hours, or 28 and 3/4, whatever it was, with the transitions and things like that, that there was a problem that existed with the current number of hours. Does the 30 hours fix that, or are we just spending more money and still have the same problem?
I would say it mitigates it somewhat. It doesn't fix it completely.
Okay.
It's a compromise.
Yeah, but, it's $132,000 and change, and if it doesn't fix the problem, then I don't know if it's a good allocation of resources. If it fixes the problem, then that's where we need to be. And I
It
don't
will
know if,
it will partially fix the problem. It won't fix it entirely.
okay. Did the budget have any, first of all, to Mrs. Cardinal's point earlier, with the previous budget, one of the questions I routinely asked was, are there programs being cut? Are we losing academic opportunities? And we were told no. Actually, I think there was some expansion of opportunities even in that budget. So, it didn't sound like there were any opportunities coming out of this budget or being reduced. Are there any academic opportunities being added?
I would say
Programs.
principally what had been in the full budget was definitely the increase in technology for both Henry Wilson and Valley View.
If
Am
I
I-
can
am I-
stop you
yeah.
there. So that was not behind-the-scenes IT staff, that was instructional staff. And the idea of that position is that
It is.
won't necessarily be a classroom teacher
working directly with students, but a classroom teacher working with teachers, helping teachers work with students and integrate it?
I would say for the first couple of years, it will be direct service to students. We're looking at moving toward a more integrated model where the technology it's not seen as a standalone, it's part of what we do. We're not there yet. And so, right now, the technology teachers directly service students. It's considered one of the unified arts. That would be able to expand it so that rather than having one person split between two schools and some kids not getting everything on a full-time rotation, we would have one person dedicated to each building to be doing that, getting our students up to speed so that we can begin that integration process where it is more seamlessly part of the curriculum as opposed to you go here for technology. Technology is what we do as part of social studies and science and those other pieces. We won't be there next year. It will take a few years before that model makes that shift.
Okay.
But that's the goal.
All right, I know we have a pretty big investment in smart boards that have mixed use depending on classroom. We spend a lot of money on that, and I'm not sure, well, the federal government spent a lot of money on that.
And now I would say the person that we have who's split is working with teachers to integrate some of those pieces, but again, as he is split between two buildings, he has very limited time to be doing those sorts of things.
In addition to having direct classroom?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So the expanded opportunity was hopefully more technology, either with students or with teachers, so, and the snowshoes too, those weren't specifically cut, were they?
Those were not specifically cut.
Okay, so there's another potentially expanded opportunity.
And then the part-time music, to expand music back to Henry Wilson, so band and chorus would be a possibility.
Yeah, so music is there, but not band or chorus?
Right, music is there, band is on a limited basis with grades 7 and 8 and just during enrichment time and after school for grades 4, 5, and 6. So it would give an opportunity to be bringing those back into part of our curricular offerings.
Okay. And the secretary added to the SAU. If I heard the numbers correctly, it was budgeted 35 for salary and 25 for health insurance?
Which would be a two-per.
Benefits.
The benefits, it's
Right.
not just health
Okay,
insurance,
so all
FICA,
benefits.
retirement, the whole,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just to creative thinking, there's 35,000 in salary. If that were allocated to existing employees to either work more hours, you've already got your benefits cost covered, your insurance. You don't have to buy another health insurance. Same reason companies pay overtime
Sure.
sometimes rather than hire new people. Well, I'm already paying for the health insurance, cheaper to pay them time and a half while we've got this big order than go out and hire new people. So I don't know what the hours allocation looks like at the SAU, but, you know, I mean, that could potentially be 25 grand right there, while other employees get some more money in their pocket, and generally people don't turn that down, so. And I don't know where else, you know, there's the opportunity to put some more money in the pockets of people that were already paying their health insurance, so we don't pick that up again, so. The other challenge that you have is you're only really looking at one part of what's going on the ballot. You've got some collective bargaining agreements that are some of the tools that you have to attract talent and to accomplish some of these goals. You need to attract the talent with those CBAs, so those need to get passed too, to do part of this. So it's, you only have part of it on your table tonight, so that adds to some of the challenge here, if you want to get everything passed. And historically, that default budget does look pretty appetizing. I wasn't aware that I thought the default budget really just gave us a bottom line. It didn't tie our hands as to where we could allocate resources, or at least it gives us the same lines that we had before.
It gives us the same lines, so the new positions that would be created in this budget would not be in the default budget. So,
We have lines for example, for the paras, we have lines for paras.
but say the increased, the part-time music position would
Right.
not be in the default budget. The part-time,
But we don't have
Um,
lines, we have lines for music teachers.
but the position itself would not be in the default budget.
So we couldn't do that.
We'd have to put the funding somewhere else.
Something else would have to shift.
Right, I understand you're moving some money around, but
Right.
you can still do a lot of what's in the plan, as long as the lines are there. There was only a couple things I think created new lines. I think some of those were proposed last week for
Right.
building maintenance and stuff with the move of the SAU. So, okay. Guess that was all I had for questions and some things to think about, so.
Thank you. Any other public participation? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Our next meeting is,
December 5th?
is that next week?
It is, I'm sorry.
It's next Monday, December 5th, 6:30. Thank you to those of you viewing from home. Thank you to those of you that came out tonight. And entertain the motion to go into non-public under nominations and resignations. So moved by Mrs. Moore and second by Mr. Frieda. All those in favor by roll. Aye. Aye.